An extension of the Five on the Floor podcast on the 5 Reasons Sports Network, brought to you by Biscayne Bay Brewing. Got a bunch of Marlins lager here. Got to crack these open. The official beer of the Miami Marlins and also of 5 Reasons Sports. Check it out at BiscayneBayBrewing.com. Ask for it at your local restaurant. This is where everything's going here in South Florida. This is the only independent brewery in South Florida. Also, check out the Tropical Bay IPA and all of their other beers. All right, Ethan Skolnick here. We got a full crew. Once again, we have as many people as the Heat have players. Up at the top, our producer, Alejandro Villegas, Ricky J. Mark, next to him, David Fernandez next to him, Jonathan Ramlica next to him. Check out, I'm posting your article today. It'll be up any minute, Jonathan, okay, on the UFC stuff. Brady Hawk below him, and then Greg Sylvander next to me. Check out the podcast that I did with Greg Adam Barai as Clutch Corner, and also Alex Salido. We did one last night. It's actually trending towards our biggest episode of the year, so I guess people are interested in James Harden. Let's get to that first. People know Greg's opinion and my opinion. I will let the rest of you weigh in if you like. The Heat claimed they were never in on James Harden towards the end. They kind of sent that out through another reporter. Is there disappointment from anyone that they didn't get him first, and secondarily that he's going to end up on a division, not a division, but a conference rival now? I'll let anybody jump in on that.
No, I don't think that I'm too disappointed just because of what they were asking for. You know what I mean? They were asking for so much. And if we were to give up all of that for him, we probably wouldn't even be able to play the game tonight. So at that point, I feel like we won that trade, and we didn't give up all we still have to. And then they also have Oladipo, who still wants to be traded. So there's another option. There's always going to be another option. Harden isn't the only disgruntled star in the league. There's going to be other options coming up moving forward. So this is just one opportunity we miss right now, and we'll hit another one moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Harden. Does anybody else disagree?
Yeah, I'm not disappointed at all. I wasn't a Harden fan to begin with in terms of him being traded to Miami. It works out. Personally, I've been on record as saying I'm more of a Beal guy, and honestly, given what we would have had to give up, it's fine. I'm with Jonathan on that. I'm a Beal guy, anyways.
And we'll see what happens with Beal. My theory on this is now, as we see more of these super teams forming, the stars that are by themselves are going to want to get out of those situations. So, I mean, if Bradley Beal thought he had no chance before, he really thinks he has no chance now, I would assume. Because, again, it's not just Brooklyn, I think, that got more competitive yesterday. Indiana secured itself as a legitimate team in the Eastern Conference, which we weren't quite sure about. All right, let's get to tonight. I had Ira on my onside radio show today. Both of us kind of believe this entire situation has become a farce. It's Russian roulette. You don't know who's playing night tonight. You don't know when they're going to cancel or not going to cancel. His suggestion was that they should give Max Strus some bad sushi so that the Heat don't have 8 available players tonight. Just get Max sick for one night. I might sacrifice Chris Silva instead, but you choose one of them. I'm sorry about that. Brady, I mean, you were just on the pregame calls. This was difficult enough 2 nights ago. I felt like the Heat emptied the clip. Now they got to play him 2 nights later, and now who's back for Philadelphia?
Tobias Harris, Matisse Thybulle, and Shake Milton. But Doc Rivers said he doesn't even know how much they're going to play. And somebody actually asked him, Spoelstra, about staying honest and playing the guys that are available instead of just acting like one guy is not available, so then they don't have to play in these circumstances like the way they are. But he just, gave a pretty much Eric Spoelstra answer saying that it's the competitive nature that they just want to all go out there and play. So, yeah, I don't think there's going to be many changes. He was asked about adjustments, but what adjustments can you really make the team with 8 guys? You're not going to make any rotational adjustments. The starting lineup's going to be the same. Everything's going to be the same. It's just going to be, maybe different ways to attack Embiid and make him uncomfortable in certain spots. But other than that, it's going to be pretty similar than the other night.
Yeah, poor Precious. So let's get to the reality of this situation, Greg. They're going to lose tonight, most likely. I mean, even you are not going to pick them tonight, correct? I mean, you tried in the last game. You were damn close.
Yeah, no, it's unlikely that they get tonight because the hot shooting thing happened in the last game, and that's like the thing that you have to have go right in order to steal one of those. But I'll just say this. If this game is competitive, like at all, like towards the end, even like I'm not going to be afraid of Philly going forward, like straight up. Like if they don't dispatch of this Miami Heat team pretty easily tonight, you've got the same 8. You've got, like this young group that, they maybe looked good in the last game, but we'll see if they can do it again tonight. So just replicating that performance, I think, is unlikely. So I'm expecting Philly to probably win handily. And if they don't, I think that's an indictment on the Sixers.
Okay, so let's look at this, though. The reality is they likely are going to lose tonight, and then they'll be 4-6 after 10 games. You usually say 20 games into a season you start to evaluate, but remember, there's 10 fewer games this year, so there's actually 62 left after this. What level of concern, David? I know they haven't had Jimmy for a lot of this. Other guys have been out, but 4-6 after, again, crazy circumstances, but after getting the NBA Finals, Heat fans are going to be upset.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's the nature of Heat Twitter, right? Somebody's going to be upset. I mean, look at what happened in the wake of the Harden deal. So many fans were upset that the Heat couldn't land him. But yeah, I mean, you obviously disappointment with 4-6, but as you mentioned, what's going on here with this season, the inconsistency of the lineup, right? And not having Jimmy, and then obviously what they're dealing with right now. It's an incredible ask to have these players stay plugged in and do what they need to do in order to be competitive. And we really haven't seen the full Heat team for any extended run at all this year. So it's really hard to make any sort of judgment. I mean, they're moving into what would have been a softer part of the schedule, but if they're only rolling out 8 guys, then, just get into the playoffs. That's it. They just have to get into the playoffs.
If there are any playoffs. And I want to see how that situation plays out. Ricky, you've seen a lot of big 3 teams come together, or superstar-laden teams. Obviously, we saw it in Boston. It took off right away. That was a dominant team its first year, pretty much right out of the gate. Miami started 9-8, had some struggles. We saw the Lakers add, with Kobe and Shaq, add Karl Malone and Gary Payton towards the end, didn't work. We saw the Houston experiment. I'm not talking about Harden, but I'm talking about Barkley and Olajuwon and Pippen, or Barkley, Olajuwon, and Drexler. Didn't really work very well either. How quickly do you think that this Brooklyn thing will come together again, provided that Kyrie Irving actually wants to play basketball?
Honestly, I think this season's a wash for the Nets, as much as Nets fans probably don't want to hear, because as you just mentioned, Kyrie hasn't been seen in 2 weeks almost. KD's the only guy who is available, and he's coming back from an Achilles, and James Harden is very clearly out of shape. This is going to be interesting. This is the kind of big 3 where, honestly, I can't think of another big 3 where heading into their union, they're having more questions than answers. It's one thing to say, oh, wow, this is an explosive offensive team, but if they score 119 points, they're most likely, based on who's out there, scheduled to give up maybe 140. So I'm not really optimistic at this moment, especially given what's going on with the team.
Yeah, I mean, and no bigs on the roster, although I guess, you could try to get bigs cheap one way or the other, whether it's buyout market. DeAndre Jordan, it's not a whole lot else. They had to give up a lot of depth in the trade.
Mm-hmm.
But let's look at what happens next for the Heat from a transactional perspective. Again, Greg, I'll start with you and go to some of the others. Once one player moves, it kind of creates other possible player movement. The conversation today, mostly about Oladipo, maybe Tucker in Houston. What is the most that you would put on the table? Let's not put Tucker in the equation. I know Oladipo can't be aggregated with anybody until March, so you can't even get both of them together at this point. Oladipo can only be traded on his own. But if you take a look at what is the most that you give up for just Vic?
Something in the neighborhood of the salary cap that you need. So let's just say, for all intents and purposes, that's Andre Iguodala, Kendrick Nunn, and I would say all the draft picks that they have available. Something in the neighborhood of that. Maybe KZ Okpala too, honestly. Something like that. That's probably about as much as I would go. And even the draft picks can get a little weary with me. But I wouldn't even think about, including Duncan Robinson or Tyler Hero. Like, that's not even on the table with Oladipo. Even if he agreed to an extension, I'm not really in favor of trading either of those guys for Oladipo. But, a smaller package, I would be willing to unleash all of the draft picks if he were to, let's say, sign an extension to lock himself into staying in Miami.
Well, to me, that's the big question. I mean, do you even want him to sign an extension? I guess that would be the issue here. I mean, I'll go to Jonathan on this. Like, I mean, he can become a free agent after this year. You could wait, not give up the draft capital, hope that somebody else doesn't trade for him, at least somebody else that he doesn't extend with. If you like him, which, there's been some internal disagreement about that, I would say. Not everybody's on the same page with this with the Heat. But is he worth it? I mean, is Victor Oladipo, in your view, if you put Victor on this team with the core, Jimmy, Dragic, Bam, and some of these young players, is that enough to win the East? Is that a player you go in for with maybe a trade and an extension?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely be down for him for a 1-year rental just because of what he is as a player, and I feel like he can put this team on the next level for this year. But as far as his value moving forward and extending him as a max player, I don't think he's that 1A superstar that you keep and you max around and you have playing with Jimmy and Bam for the next couple of years. I think he's just one of those guys that can fill a hole. But if you demand somewhere upward of $20 million or more than that, I don't think it's worth keeping him long term.
Brady, I'll go to you on this, and then we'll just go around the horn here to finish. A lot of things, like Greg mentioned, happened right the other night for the Heat to stay in that game and then, understandably to finish it. What is the one thing that did not happen the other night that has to happen tonight?
Well, I'd probably have to say maybe a better shooting night from Max Struss. Because if you're looking at guys like Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson played well, Gabe Vincent played well. If you're going to talk about one guy, maybe Max Struss has a big shooting night and could be somebody that gives them an edge. But other than that, like I said, I think it's just going to be mostly about just continue to do the same things that they did last game because there's nothing that can really change. But to mention about what you guys were talking about with the seeding, fans worried about kind of the Heat team going forward. Everybody's going through the same situation. Like, it's not only going to be Miami. Other teams are going to be like impacted as well. So say even they struggle and get to a 6 seed, you don't know who's going to be in the 3rd seed. Like, this isn't going to be a year in the playoffs where everything's going to be in order, where the best teams are the top 4 teams. There's going to be teams that in the 6th or 7th seed that are better than the 3 and 4 seed. So I think that's just a way to look at it, that just because Miami struggles and gets to a certain point, I think it's going to be the same situation for other teams as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
I think I'm losing my connection here, so I'll let you. I may have too many people here. I lost it. Let's go tonight. Is anybody here? Anybody, starting with Alejandro, but around the horn? Is anyone here brave enough to pick a Heat win tonight?
Yeah, I do.
I'll do it.
No, I do. I think the Heat can win. I think if they continue to play free, they have the guys to play free. You saw it last game. And I think if they come out shooting better than they did early on, if like they did as they went on in that game, I think it can happen, and I think they could squeeze one out.
If they follow their pattern,
All right.
they lost the last game, so they can get a win tonight.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I think there's something that can be said about. Yeah, I think there's something that can be said about the. I mean, look, if I'm the Heat, I'm not afraid of the Sixers anymore. Even if I wasn't all that much before. I mean, we brought barely anybody to the table. We started a rookie pretty much the whole night, and we came down to one play and one really bad missed palming ball call before beating them. I don't think anyone in the East should be afraid of the Philadelphia 76ers, much less the Miami Heat. They're pretenders. They're the same kind of pretenders that the Raptors were before Kawhi got there. There's no reason to be afraid.
All right. I like that take from Ricky. All right. David Fernandez, Ricky J. Mark, Alejandro Villegas, Freddie Hawk, Jonathan Ramlikan, Greg dropped off. We will have a post-game pod, post-game stream, and my feed will catch up to you guys eventually. Have a good night. Stick around with Alejandro.
All right, Ricky, so you're welcome to stay with me if you want. Right now, we're going to read some of the comments here if you want to, and then we're going to play all the press conferences that were done right after the last game. So bear with me here. They should feel a little bit more comfortable tonight, talking about the Miami Heat facing the Philadelphia 76ers, again. What do you have to say to that, Ricky?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because here's the thing: if you're the Philadelphia 76ers and your second best player scores, I think, 2 points, and you need 40 points or 45 points and almost 20 rebounds from your best player just to escape a team that only had 6 or 7 players available, all of them being close to the bottom of the rotation, not counting Tyler Hero, then I mean, you should be terrified. If you're a Heat fan, you should feel very confident in what your team can do. Take Gabe Vincent, for example, had the best game of his life the other day. And yeah, it came in a loss, but now he is able to exhibit and showcase his abilities, and he might get more minutes as a result of that. So I think everybody on this team moving up, it fits in with the next man up mentality that this team has. So absolutely they should feel more comfortable tonight. Miami, not Philly.
Yeah, right. Emery Rick says, I know this will be unpopular. I will trade Dragic, Olynyk, and a future pick for Oladipo and Tucker with a contract agreement for both of them. Would you do that during this season or at the end of the season or at any point in your life? Ricky, what do you think about this proposal?
Well, Emery is absolutely right. It will be unpopular. I disagree. I don't think I don't trade Dragic under almost any circumstance. Like, he is a made man in Miami. He is nearing UD status for me as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. He became a made man for me after Game 7 of the 2016 first round when he pretty much bullied Kemba Walker into an early offseason. He's shown time and again that he's willing to sacrifice for this team. And I understand this is a business, but it would be a pretty ugly look if we were to unceremoniously trade him for someone that could end up leaving in the offseason. Because players say, like even Kyrie Irving himself said, yeah, I'd like to stay if you guys will have me. And then by the, a calendar year later, he was no longer on the Celtics. So nah, not for Vic. Maybe as like an absolute backup plan if we really needed it, but not for Victor Oladipo. I think he would have been the third tier in terms of shooting guard options for this team.
Our friend Abdel is saying, digging the new look, Ricky. So yes, it's a 2021 look for Ricky, who's now in the state of Florida. He's not in France anymore. And we have David here. He wants to join us as well. Welcome back, David. We are the three amigos here now. Okay, so Emery saying also have a side agreement with Boogie to get bought out and picked up by the Miami Heat. I don't like that team that Emery is proposing right now.
Yeah, I don't know where that's coming from. He just reunited with his Kentucky mate John Wall in Houston. They just got rid of Harden. I don't think he's leaving Houston anytime soon. It doesn't really make sense. Why would Boogie request to get bought out just to sign with the Heat when he could have done that in the offseason? It doesn't really make much sense.
And the Heat doesn't need one guy like that, right?
No,
I mean they could use a big, and he would be interesting playing next to Bam. He's got some stretchiness to his game, but like Ricky said, he seems to. I think they're going to run it through Houston for a little while, see what they do. I mean, Oladipo provides a legitimate player for them. I mean, they can they can make a little bit of noise if they really lock in and they make a run here.
What we're seeing in Houston right now, I was actually talking with a friend of mine just earlier today about how when you look at John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, Christian Wood, who could very well win the Most Improved Player award this season. You have him. You have PJ Tucker, who people have been saying that he might get bought out or traded. You have Eric Gordon, who's still on that team. They have, given how weird this season has been, they could still sneak into the playoffs. And right now, with the way their salary situation looks, I believe they might have around between 18 and 20 million in cap space this offseason. So they could potentially get better if the Wall comeback experience works out. If the Cousins comeback experience works out, then I think Houston is in a very good position to not only rebuild but retool. And I think I commend them for what they were able to get back for James Harden, especially considering how Harden's basically sabotaged himself since the beginning of the season.
Yeah, they got 8 picks for a guy that didn't want to be there. So that was great by Houston, right? I mean, they
had to restock. They had to restock the cupboard with picks, right? Because they had sent off so many of them when they acquired Westbrook. So they kind of got some of that back, right? But even those picks and that flexibility, they could turn around and flip it for somebody else. I mean, it might come down to, are they willing to max Oladipo, but that'll come down to whether or not their owner wants to pay that kind of money for him. So we'll see. But they're a potentially interesting team, that's for sure.
Sure. Okay, so here another comment. Gabe Vincent will struggle as the 76ers will adjust to him after the great night that he had the other day. So what do you guys think about this?
How dare you, Pink Moon? How dare you?
Shame.
Gabe Vincent. Spo was hiding Gabe Vincent. He didn't want to show anybody Gabe Vincent because he didn't want the Houston Rockets to ask for Gabe Vincent.
Exactly.
Gabe Vincent was great the other night.
Gabe Vincent is a national treasure in Miami. Okay, he can do no wrong. He's like that one son that he could do whatever he wants, and we will still defend him to the death. Gabe Vincent, all right, okay, but Gabe Vincent has definitely demonstrated that he can play at a decent enough level when times are tough.
Absolutely.
The Heat need a guy like that. And here's the thing: I don't think the Philadelphia 76ers are going to be game planning for Gabe Vincent when Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Andre Iguodala, my goodness, Kendrick Nunn, even when all those guys are still well ahead in the rotation ahead of this guy. I mean, Gabe Vincent, you know what you're getting out of him. He's not terribly difficult to scout. He occasionally slashes. He's more of a shooter. He's more of a scoring guard. I mean, I don't think they're really thinking twice about him. They're supposed to beat Miami tonight. Yeah. They're supposed to on paper. But the fact that they struggled so hard. I mean, honestly, let's just be real, right? We were arguably maybe one possession away, one stop away from winning that game in regulation.
Yeah, the officials blow that whistle, and that game is ours.
Yeah, so it's like for a team like Philly, who has time and again, and this is, I think, their third or fourth season, of like the successful process or whatever, where, they get to the playoffs, they beat a team that they're supposed to beat, and then they get embarrassed in some form. Like they shouldn't have lost to Toronto on that shot. They shouldn't have lost. They shouldn't have gotten swept by Boston, who pretty much manhandled them in 4 games. It's just right at this point. Can you depend on Embiid for an entire season? Is he going to be in the right shape to be able to carry you for an entire season? Can you depend on Ben Simmons to expand his game beyond that of a 1980s power forward? Can
Tobias Harris?
There we go. Can Tobias Harris elevate his game to a level where he can be that second scorer? I don't think Tobias Harris should be your second scorer, your second best scorer. That needs to be Ben Simmons. He's the most talented. He's the most talented wing or guard or forward or whatever you want to call him on that team next to Joel Embiid. He has to develop his game, or else basically Doc Rivers is going to repeat history like he did in Los Angeles. You're going to see a team that doesn't meet their expectations.
Yeah, I'm curious to see actually how Ben Simmons comes out tonight. I mean, he had 2 shot attempts the other night, and he scored 5 points. He did have 12 assists. He's a great facilitator on the offensive end, but you're right. He does need to sort of expand his offensive game. But I wonder, now that Harden has been dealt and Simmons was the guy that was being dangled, even though Daryl Morey says that he never offered Simmons, he offered Simmons for sure. So now that that's past him, do we see a different Simmons, right? Does he come back and, establish himself and grow? Maybe this was just like a lull. I mean, he's a young player, right? So it affected him. Maybe, I mean, who knows? So I am curious to see how Simmons comes out tonight, because if he is a hyper aggressive and doing the things that he can do, he and Simmons will be absolutely unstoppable. Simmons and Embiid, would be absolutely unstoppable. I mean, we saw the other night when Embiid wanted to score, he scored. The Heat didn't have anybody physically capable of dealing with him in the post. There's a similar deal with Simmons, because the guys that would normally be able to deal with Simmons physically, well, tonight they're going to have to deal with Embiid. The Heat just don't have the versatility this evening. So it'll be interesting to see how Simmons responds now that Harden has been, dealt, and he won't be going to Houston.
Yeah, I think there are 2, when it comes to young players, I've realized that there are 2 kinds of ways in which a young player can react. He can react in a way where he's more comfortable, he's loose, and he just goes off and has a great rest of the season. Or he can react the way a lot of the young guys in LA did after the Anthony Davis trade rumors fell through at that point where they pretty much fell apart as a team and they never recovered. It all depends on the player. He can come back strong. He can completely fall apart, but I guess we'll have to find out in the next few games. Hopefully, I think in the best interest of basketball that he tears it up the rest of the season, except for, against Miami.
Right.
But who knows? At this point, I'm reminded of when he hit his first career three and everyone was freaking out. You would think that he would have been like, okay, yeah, whatever, laughing, lighthearted. Yeah, I finally hit a three. Let's have a laugh and keep playing. He looks visibly uncomfortable with the way the crowd reacted, without the way Joel was celebrating. I don't know. Maybe it's a personality thing. Players are people too. So we'll have to see.
Players are people too. That's a great quote right there. So William Garcia is saying, hi, keep up the good work. Let's go Heat. Thank you, William. Remember to subscribe, to leave your comment, to turn on the notifications so you get one every time we go live. Sean Hernandez is saying, Gabe Vincent played like a legit starter the other night. Great game. Let's go Heat. Emory Riggs again saying Houston's going to break that thing up. He doesn't believe they're going to stay with the same group of players that they have right now. Adjustments to Vincent will open up everyone else a little more. So yes, let's talk about Philadelphia and maybe adjusting their game to Gabe Vincent, because they already know Duncan Robinson, they know Tyler Hero, they even know Andre Iguodala, of course. All these guys are known in the league already, but Gabe Vincent was a surprise. So what can change there in order for Philly to try to stop the threat of Gabe Vincent tonight?
I mean, I think the 76ers, they have to realize that the only way that the Heat are going to come out with an upset here is by hitting three-pointers. They took 56 three-point attempts the other night, the Heat did, and I think they hit like 19 of them. They started cold, but they got hot, which is how they gained control of the game. So if Philly, if they're taking this game seriously, and again, the Heat are at such a talent deficit in this matchup, in this current iteration of the matchup, that the 76ers probably don't need to scheme at all. They can let Gabe Vincent do what he wants to do. But for the Heat, the only path to victory is, hitting as many threes as humanly possible and taking care of the basketball, right? But they have struggled with turnovers throughout the year, but if this is the group that is probably the best shooting group that they have, right? They didn't really lose any of the shooters to the COVID stuff. So, Vincent, he's going to have that kind of game again to keep the Heat in it. Robinson's going to have to do it again. Hero's going to have to do it again. And so much of the game has been from beyond the arc. So if Philly's going to do anything, they're going to have to defend the three-point line a little bit better tonight.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just a matter of stopping the drive and kick and preventing the shooters from developing a rhythm. Because at this point, Miami has had essentially the same kind of player at the point guard position since Jason Williams, arguably, or Rafer Alston. Because, Miami, we haven't had a pure point guard in a really long time.
Yeah.
Which means that, the guys that play point for this team, Kendrick Nunn, Gabe Vincent, to a lesser extent, Mario Chalmers, these are guys that shoot first in many ways and then pass later, or they just play a role in a positionless type of offense. Honestly, and I'll just say this now, if Doc Rivers is game planning for Gabe Vincent, I hope he resigns shortly thereafter.
Something's gone wrong.
Yeah, something's gone horribly wrong, because Gabe Vincent is, I've said, he's maybe the 9th or 10th player on this in the rotation, and that might be generous because we didn't see much of him before COVID struck this team. I doubt it. I really doubt that that's the case.
So
he may have stolen Kendrick Nunn's minutes though. If he has another great game tonight, I know that Nunn has kind of fallen out of the rotation himself, right? But Vincent seems to be, I'm not going to go as far as to say he's proven himself to be, but he seems to be a passable NBA guard that comes off the bench, kind of like a microwave Vinnie Johnson type from the Pistons back in the 80s, something like that. Some guy who could just come in and light it up somebody to take some of the pressure off Goran Dragic if he's also coming off the bench. So, Vincent, of all that's happened over the course of the last, couple games and whatnot, Vincent he might be stealing Kendrick Nunn's minutes had Nunn had any, at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a standout performance for him, in addition to last night, was the second night of the back-to-back against Milwaukee. He had some pretty good minutes in that game. Now he wasn't a world breaker per se, but he made some decent defensive plays. He was able to stay in front of his man. He scored when he needed to. I think he had maybe like 6 or 7 or 8 points, but those were 8 important points. His high school, his college had every reason to give him a shout out on Twitter that night because he did what he needed to. He was a guy that he was a G League guy who got called up, and were it not for injuries, Kendrick Nunn not playing well, COVID, he would still be the 12th, 13th, or 14th man on this team. It's great. And honestly, I think as this season continues to wear on, guys like Gabe Vincent and KZ Okpala are going to be very important, especially when it comes to giving Andre Iguodala enough rest, because we don't want to wear out Andre Iguodala this early in the season. We made that mistake years back. Not long after LeBron left, we started playing Chris Anderson, Birdman, heavy minutes, and that was pretty much the end of his career. He didn't have anything left in the tank as a result of that, because he is the kind of guy who is a spot player who gives you a burst of energy in limited minutes, and then he goes and sits back down. We don't want to go to the well too many times with Iggy. Hopefully KZ develops and blossoms. So that way, if KZ really blows up this season, that could potentially make Andre Iguodala's expiring. Oh, no. Well, he's not expiring yet, but that could potentially make Andre Iguodala expendable, which will allow us to use that money to bring in a rotation player or perhaps even a starter, especially if you package Andre Iguodala with Kelly Olynyk or Myers Leonard or somebody else on that team. It could benefit Miami in the long run in terms of clearing up and balancing the roster some more. All
right, guys. So we have the starting lineup for tonight. It looks a little bit different. We don't have Bam Adebayo starting. We have Precious Achiuwa in his place, so it's going to be a little different that we're used to, right? And we'll have it here on our screen in a little bit. Let's keep reading some of the comments. Close off Embiid, I think we'll be fine. You can't let Embiid to win the game again tonight, right? You have to, I don't know, I don't care, put 2 or 3 guys
easier,
on it.
Yeah, that's easier said than done. Embiid is a freak. When he's at his top level, he's one of, if not the best big man in the game. Probably behind Jokic, right? I would take Jokic before I take Embiid, but it's close in my mind anyway. When he's there and he's engaged, and he's not always engaged, and he doesn't have the best cardio, right? You could see him get tired and things like that. But we saw it in the third quarter the other night. He's just so physically dominant that to say it's as simple as just closing him off or limiting his opportunities, we could say it, but it ain't easy.
Yeah, I wish we had the personnel to do that, but I remember the other night when we were playing Philly. Excuse me, wow, my voice cracked there. That was weird. The other night when we were playing Philly, Embiid, like you said, he looked lethargic. I was shocked when I saw that he had like 10 to 15 points heading into midway through the third quarter. But once he realized, oh wait a minute, I can just shoot over Precious. He started burying jumpers from the top of the key, and Precious Achiuwa just seemed like a high schooler playing against a Division I college player of the year. There was nothing Precious could have done. He battled admirably. So did Chris Silva. But at the end of the day, the better player remembered he was the better player, and that's what happened. You tip your hat. Those shots, went in as they were supposed to, and he outmatched us. And even then, even after all that, it took some miracle 3 from one of Philly's own G Leaguers to give them back the league. Choice call from a ref about palming and all that stuff. And even then, Miami was still able to barely escape. Now, as for the starters, I believe we have Hero, Vincent, Robinson, Olynyk, and Achiuwa. There we go. Wow. I think, it's funny. I think Spo is relishing this opportunity because I don't think it's much of a secret that Spo's been trying to play Precious as a backup 5 just to see what he can do as kind of like a mini Bam. Now, I suspect that, and I think we might have spoken about this in previous streams, that at some point, once Achua is able to develop a reliable long-distance jumper like a three-point shot, then we might start seeing minutes where Achua plays next to Bam. Once that happens, look out.
You're right. So here's the starting lineup. Like Ricky said, it's going to be Vincent, Hero, Robinson, Achua, and Kelly Olynyk. Again, they went back to the old format. I like this one better, but they went back to this to see if we win tonight, because we did win the last time we used this design. So let's see if that works tonight. So we have a lot of comments here. Myers Leonard's not playing tonight, for all of you asking. He's still out because of his shoulder, so it's going to be the same aid as the other night. It's going to be very difficult. So a question here, is there any big man available that we can sign? At this point, I don't think so, right?
Oh, there are many. Are they good? Are they worth signing? That's another question. Because fun fact, and I know this will be a blast from the past, but Michael Beasley is still a free agent.
Bees is out there. That's right.
Do we want him anywhere near this team? Yeah, probably not. I mean, I think it's telling that both Mario Chalmers and Michael Beasley went undrafted in the G League draft the other day, when multiple teams had opportunities to look at him. It's quite possible that Michael Beasley has seen the last of an NBA floor, at least as a player, because he, I believe, signed with the Nets late last season, caught COVID, they cut him. We haven't seen him since.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think that there are any. I mean, Tyson Chandler's out there, but he wouldn't do anything for us. I'm kind of scrolling through a list of free agents right now.
Nothing on offense really at this point.
No, not right. I mean, that's the thing. When you're talking about adding somebody to this mix, I know some people have talked about maybe trading for somebody like Andre Drummond or things like that. You have to think about the fit next to Bam, right? Because Bam's going to have the ball. Bam's going to work out of the elbow and things like that. So whoever they bring in, if it's a big man, it has to be somebody with kind of like Kelly Olynyk's skill set, right? And if you could combine Kelly Olynyk and Myers Leonard, you'd get kind of like the perfect Bam complement almost. Somebody who could really stretch the floor, play defense, maybe rebound a little bit. That's what they need. And if they're going to bring in a big man, he's got to be able to shoot, but he also has to be able to protect the paint and rebound. And the names on that list, very short, if any.
Yeah,
the thing with Andre Drummond, I mean, it sounds like a great idea in theory, but Drummond just signed a max contract extension with the Cavs, meaning that we would have to trade one of our max contracts, Bam, Jimmy, a package of Iggy, Leonard, and Olynyk to make the salaries match. There's no way we would be able to acquire him. And considering this guy plays on inside, I don't see how that would work for this team.
Yeah.
Yeah, me neither. So, okay, let's keep reading some of the messages here. We have Ben will come out hard, but with no jump shot, so he has to attack the rim a lot in order to get points. Over under Duncan layups 1.5. We saw Duncan the other night just shooting, man, and he has to do the same tonight. Just go ahead and shoot every chance you get.
I'm gonna take the under on that 1.5. Duncan is gonna hoist up as many threes as he can. I mean, I know he put it on the deck and he got one, I think, the other night, but he's gonna fire from everywhere.
Yeah,
and he should.
Yeah.
That's what they have to do. Okay, so we have Rockets. We're asking too much for. Glad Pat Riley doesn't care about Heat Twitter. Yes, because if he just went with what Heat Twitter wants, we would have a totally different team. Come on, guys. The Phillies not building a game plan around Gabe Vincent. Yeah, of
course.
Thank you, Abdul.
We reached that same conclusion here. We got to that point as well.
Yeah.
Andre should guard Embiid. Andre Iguodala. That would be the same mess that it was with Chris Silva the other night. So
yeah,
even worse, I think. Andre Iguodala is not the man to put on Joel Embiid. I think
he'll just shoot over him. Like remember Andre Iguodala is 6'7". He's got really long arms, but so does Joel Embiid. He'll just shoot jumpers over him the whole night. I don't see how that would work.
Yeah,
it's tough. Mm-hmm.
David Smith saying, "Man, they should force Myers Leonard to play or get sent to the D League."
Well, he's out with a shoulder injury, so He's not getting on the floor one way or the other.
Yeah, and and that sounds like a potential players union problem if you start forcing players to do stuff they don't want to do.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a battle Miami wants to have right now.
No, and we know the players, the Miami Heat players are not ones to fake injuries or not to
No.
play somebody just hurts. It's probably really bad what happened to Maris Leonard. Do you think they put in Gabe for most worthless when players come back? So yes, if Gabe Vincent keeps playing this way, he's gonna earn a spot in the rotation, like you guys said, or is he just gonna be back to just riding the bench?
I mean, I think he might have earned spot minutes here and there, but he wouldn't replace somebody like Mo Harkless because their positions are so different. You know, the guy that's going to take Harkless's minutes ideally is KZ Okpala, right? And we know that Spo tends to keep a short leash with his rotations and stuff. So if Vincent's going to take minutes from anybody, it's going to be Kendrick Nunn. Maybe Avery Bradley if Bradley needs a rest, or if he's out for one reason or another, he could kind of fill in for Bradley. But Vincent is kind of like really the third guard off the bench at this point. If you've got Dragic coming off the bench and you've got Avery Bradley, then Vincent's behind both of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
But he's probably none.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, they, like you said, they play two different positions. I think Mo Harkless probably lost his minutes the first week of the season, and it's going to be really hard to get them back, especially after what we saw out of KZ in the limited minutes he played. I'm just thinking back to that Bucks game when KZ, and I'm sure there are statisticians that know this, but when he was guarding Giannis, I don't believe Giannis scored once. And that's important. We need that kind of length. He's committed on defense. He is working on perfecting his 3-point shot. I remember watching a profile on him, and I remember his coach from college actually talking about how KZ Okpala's ball handling skills are underrated, and how they're not utilized nearly. They weren't utilized nearly enough in college. I think we might see a little bit more of that. I think a play that sticks with me is when the Heat were playing the Raptors in preseason, when KZ went off for, I think, 24 points. He pretty much broke down the defense from the top of the key, got to the basket, laid it in, like that comment I just saw there, in a way kind of like Ingram. Now, is he the next Brandon Ingram? Probably not. No, I think he's a different kind of player. But there is a lot of untapped potential in KZ Okpala. He should have been a first-round pick that somehow slid to the second. I think Miami might be able to say they got away with the steal if they continue to develop him and he pans out the way he should be. But Gabe Vincent won't be taking Harkless's minutes. We have big men for that already. Okay,
so we have the Sixers starting five. It's going to be Danny Green, Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Ben Simmons. That's the starting five for the Philadelphia 76ers.
If they don't kill this Heat team, there's something wrong in Philly because, I mean, come on. Mm-hmm. There's such a talent deficit tonight. It's going to take a superhuman effort from this Heat squad to keep up with those guys. I mean, you're talking about 2 All-Stars, 2 All-NBA players, and a very useful, talented player in Tobias Harris. I mean, I know that Harris hasn't played in a minute, but still, the Sixers should – really give the Heat some problems tonight. But if the Heat can keep this close, as Ricky, as you were saying earlier, we don't have to worry about Philly at all moving forward. Mm-hmm. If this group of Heat players can keep it close, forget it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you look at this Sixers team, honestly, it's funny because if you think about it, wouldn't it be typically Sixers if they got their whole team back and then got waxed by Miami today? I mean, if you really think about it, like this team, this group of guys, they are too good for their own good in a weird way. It's almost like they play like a defending champion that's won this thing a million times and they're getting caught on a bad night. Problem is they haven't won anything and likely won't. I'm reminded of multiple, and I don't want to paint all Sixers fans in a corner or with a broad stroke, but I can't help but see, how some of them behave whenever they beat the Heat. It's like, fam, you beat a team that had maybe 6 or 7 active players, half of whom were probably in the G League a year or 2 ago, and you barely got out of that alive. this is not a win you gloat about. If we're both at full strength and you beat us by 15, despite us going off, then all right, fine, go ahead, talk. But the last victory is not a victory to be proud of by any means. So, like, got him out there a little bit. Just relax.
Calma, relax. To all of you Sixers fans. So for all of you that are just getting here, this is the starting five for the Miami Heat tonight. It's going to be Gabe Vincent, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Precious Achiuwa, and Kelly Olynyk. That's the starting five tonight, the same one that we used a couple of nights ago. And let's keep reading your messages because it's been very interesting. And thank you, Ricky and David, for staying here with me tonight. It's very fun, and I like reading people's comments and actually giving a lot of time, like you guys have been doing, just giving them some answers, right? Jimmy Buckets, by the way, talking about Jimmy Buckets, you can go to our website, 5reasonsports.com, and there you can buy all our T-shirts. One of them is the Jimmy Canastas shirt. Go ahead and buy that one, Jimmy Buckets, or any of those that you want there. And let's read what he has to say. Just trade for JaVale McGee to have size off the bench. Would you bring JaVale McGee to this team?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, me neither. And trade for Deep and Tucker to complete. Okay, we're getting a lot of messages.
That one's a little bit more interesting.
We're getting a lot of messages with this idea, right? Bringing Oladipo and Tucker. But the thing is, we know Houston likes to ask for a lot of assets back. We saw it in the Harden trade. So what would it take in order for the Heat to get these two players? What would you guys give away to bring Victor Oladipo and Tucker to the Miami Heat?
See, when it comes to Depot, honestly, I wouldn't give all that much because, one, he's an expiring deal. Two, he's still coming back from that injury, even though I do like him quite a bit. It's just I don't see Houston flipping him because I know he's eligible to be traded on March the 4th, and the trade deadline this year is, I believe, March 31st. After acquiring him, I really feel like the Rockets are going to want to see what this team can look like with John Wall, Victor Oladipo, PJ Tucker, Christian Wood, and DeMarcus Cousins, as well as Eric Gordon. I think it's way too early to tell. And not only that, but I don't know. PJ Tucker would be a great fit on this team. He would do a lot of the things that Jay Crowder did for us last season, but I wouldn't break the bank for those two right now. Now, if you told me that Bradley Beal was available, which I think he is, then we can talk because that's a guy. It's funny. I was actually playing 2K before I came on, and I actually made that trade for him. I kind of turned on trade override a little bit, so I was
there you go.
But
yeah, listen, to bring in Oladipo and Tucker would be really interesting, and it could be sort of the last pieces that you would need to really make a finals run with this group. But the question is, how much do you give up? Houston wanted everything for Harden. There's no way that everything goes for an Oladipo and Tucker package. It would, maybe be two of the lower end prospects and then some draft compensation, right? Because in part Oladipo has the expiring contract and Tucker is just a role player, right? You're no longer trading for a top 5 NBA player. So, I'm with you with Houston. I think they're going to kind of, see what they have. But when you look at that core, you look at a core of John Wall, Oladipo, Boogie Cousins, Christian Wood. When you look at that core, that's not a championship core, right? So they do need to enter into that rebuilding phase. And we know that they're heading in that direction. So, if they're sputtering and there's not going to be a lot of money come playoff time anyway, like if it's not open to fans and you're not like pushing to make the playoffs so that you can get a home game, 2 home games and get the gate for that, right? Then maybe they do come March decide to see what Oladipo can bring them. But again, at that point, you're talking about a rental. So, it's coming, the price tag comes way down for Houston, but they're moving into a moment for their franchise where they do have to hit the reset button, and they probably have to hit it pretty hard. Just to kind of circle back to what we were talking about earlier, Drummond is actually on an expiring deal. So there was talk of Drummond.
I stand corrected.
Yeah,
All
he's on an expiring deal. I mean, some of the other bigs that are out there on expiring deals, LaMarcus Aldridge would be a great fit here. But then beyond that, I mean, you're talking about guys like Cody Zeller, Robin Lopez, Ed Davis, Rashawn Holmes. Nobody else. I mean, we're in the JaVale McGee category at this point, right? So if they could land somebody like LaMarcus Aldridge, that would be pretty great. But again, you're talking about what do you have to send out in order to bring in somebody of that caliber. So, it'll be interesting to see what the Heat decide to do. But I also agree, Ricky, completely with, let's turn our focus to Brad Beal. I mean, because if we can get Brad Beal down here, I mean, Beal, Butler, and Bam, I mean, that's a championship core right there.
That's what I would call a big baller brand. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me not. But you said something interesting about Aldridge. There's history there, right?
Yeah.
I think it was 2015 or a couple of years back? I forget the exact year, where just the fact that it was Pat Riley, he was able to get in the room with LaMarcus Aldridge, even though we didn't have the cap space.
They didn't have any
no
money.
real way of doing it. If I remember correctly, the idea was, the idea was to get him to sign like a 1-year deal and then revisit this again in the following offseason. Obviously, that didn't work out. Aldridge took the money, as he should have. I would have done the same thing. I hope no one's on him for that. Aldridge would be interesting. It's funny because if you look at Myers Leonard and Kelly Olynyk, I think Kelly Olynyk does a little bit more with the ball in terms of ball handling. But LaMarcus Aldridge is an interesting player to have, for example, starting at the 5, moving Bam to the 4. Because Bam seems to be the kind, he's very clearly the much more mobile big man with a developing jump shot. If you get Aldridge and you're able to slot him in at the 5, move Bam to the 4, that could potentially make your team even more versatile. But it also depends on what Miami will have to give up in order to get LaMarcus. So I think I'll just blanket this for a lot of the ideas that we have. When we think of these players like Drummond, Aldridge, we have to think about what would Miami have to give up, because we're dealing with the salary cap era, meaning salaries at least have to match. And then after that, the interest does, right, on both sides. Hopefully, I mean, that'd be interesting, but hopefully we wouldn't have to give up that much. Like in a dream world, we give up like Olynyk, Myers, and I don't know.
I mean, at that point, you're talking maybe Kendrick Nunn, somebody else, one of the developmental guys.
That's the thing. The thing is, I don't know if San Antonio would even be interested in Nunn because their guards are healthy again. They have DeRozan, Dejounte. Is it DeJounte? Well, Murray.
Yeah.
Murray's back from that devastating injury. You have the guy from that's there now. I mean, they've got young guys again. Yeah, they could potentially. I think I read a story. I don't know if it was in the Ringer or something, where they could potentially end up rebuilding again. They're sneaky.
Yeah, and listen, and Aldridge's numbers are pretty. I mean, they're not what they were, right? I mean, he's getting up there, but averaging 15 points a game, almost 3 assists. I mean, he's hitting 44% from the field. I mean, his 3-point shooting isn't great this year. He's below 30%, but still, I do think as kind of a 1-year rental, it would provide something interesting for this club.
Sure.
Right. Okay, so we have some messages here for talking about Kelly Olynyk, what he should do tonight. Focus more on rebounds or focus more on trying to get more threes? I mean, he can do both. If that's
Ideally, he's doing both, getting defensive rebounds on one end and draining threes on the other end. But it's going to have to be the threes. If they want to win tonight, they've got to hit 400 3-pointers.
Mm-hmm.
Myers Leonard has a problem in the shoulder. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Rick.
it's a shoulder injury.
Yeah, well, 3 points are worth more than 1 rebound. That's just me. Kelly Olynyk, I don't think he's ever.
Depends on how that play ends, right?
Fair enough. Thing is, this team, dating back to the Big 3 era, has always been a team rebounding team, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
We don't have one guy like a Dennis Rodman type who grabs like 15, 20 rebounds a game. It's a group effort. in recent weeks, we've seen Tyler Hero really make strides with grabbing rebounds, putting himself, and I think this is a deliberate move by the coaching staff to get this guy in position to grab the rebound, not only grab the rebound, but get the offense going. Because from there, they're essentially training him and teaching him and developing him into a player that is able to build the offense from that rebound onwards. So I think, I think Tyler Hero's had multiple 10 rebound games this season, and he's a short-armed 6'4" guard with medium athleticism. That's pretty decent.
To your point, Hero is averaging 6.8 rebounds per game this year, and that's second on the team behind Bam. He's ahead of Jimmy. He's ahead of Precious. And like you said, it's rebounding by committee. Bam averages 9 boards a game. Hero averages 6.8. Olynyk is 5.8. Butler's 5.5. Precious is 5.3. Duncan's 4.2. I mean, it's everybody, right? The whole team has to rebound, but that's scheme. That's that's the way that their defense works and boxing out and things like that. You're right. It's never been about having a single rebounder, and really the game has changed to such an extent that you've got big men running pick and rolls and doing pick and pops, drawing the guys away from the basket. So of course the guards are going to be the one grabbing the rebounds and things like that. So you're on track with Hero and his rebounding numbers, and it is something that's been impressive to watch so far.
So we got this message like 1,000 times, so we're gonna answer to this friend of us, Tahim Ahmed. Thank you for saying in your message so many times. We read it. Do you guys think Ben Simmons has something to prove tonight after being in trade talks for Harden? And they talked about it before the game. So what do you guys think?
I think
shoulder.
Yeah. Well, I think he has something to prove in general. I mean, if
Not
I'm
just-
Ben Simmons, I think Ben Simmons should be flattered that Houston would have wanted him in return for Harden. That suggests that there's a certain kind of inherent value in his ability that would suggest that bringing him back would make Houston feel like they didn't get completely hosed in a deal like that. Now, Ben Simmons has, this is a guy who scored 0 points in a key playoff game once. He has a lot to prove, and it's beyond just trade rumors. This is a guy who has the potential to become a 21, 10, 8 guy, at his best. And that's even before he develops a consistent jump shot. He just has to want to do it. He has the will, he has the physical ability. Is he going to go out and do it? Because it's not like Joel's hogging the ball. He's the point guard. It's up to him,
Yeah, I mentioned it in the pregame show. I do think that, he seemed out of sorts the other night. He only took two shot attempts. He finished with 5 points. Yeah, he had 12 assists, but still, I mean, he's got literally all NBA potential and ability. He was on the all NBA team a year ago. So it will be interesting to see if he comes back with a vengeance tonight because of his performance, but also because now he doesn't have the specter of being traded to Houston kind of hanging over him. So I think it's going to tell us a lot from a maturity standpoint. I mean, I think we can pull some already based on how he's kind of acted thus far. He was kind of mopey the other night, disengaged, but if he comes tonight and he brings it tonight, it'll tell us a little bit more about him as a player.
Yes. So for all of you that are just getting here, this is the starting five for the game tonight that should be starting sometime soon. We know in the NBA they do like to take around 10 to 15 minutes to actually start the actual game. We suffered from it in the playoffs. So it's going to be Gabe Vincent, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Precious Achiuwa, and Kelly Olynyk. That's the starting five for tonight, the same 5 guys that we had last week. So Kevin Lucas is saying, forget about that Precious is up and coming. We need Bradley Beal. That's the next guy the Heat's going to target, right? Bradley Beal could be an option.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got to be. We were talking about Beal earlier, and like he's the guy where you send multiple pieces and multiple draft picks to Washington to get your hands on him because he's a top 10 NBA player. He's arguably the best shooting guard in the league right now. Especially considering the way Harden has played of late. So you do everything to try and get a guy like Beal. I mean, I know, Ricky, that you like Beal quite a bit. I actually preferred the pursuit of Beal to even Giannis. I think Beal would have been a better fit here than somebody like Giannis back when we were talking about maybe going for Giannis. But I absolutely think that Beal is kind of the next big target.
Yeah, I think, I would have been happy to have Giannis down here. I mean, I think he would have slept perfectly at the power forward spot. And I mean, God knows what Spo could have done with someone like him. I mean, he took LeBron James, who was arguably already the best player in the league, and turned him into one of the most efficient players in NBA history, where he had like a 7-game stretch of, I think, 30 points and 60% from the field, I think, in 2013. Like, there's something about this team, this system, the way Spo develops players, even players that are already established, and he almost gives them a new lease on their careers. Like, I'm reminded of players like Quentin Richardson back in 2010. I'm reminded of players like, I mean, just pick a player, Kelly Olynyk even. I don't remember Kelly shooting and hitting this many threes in Boston and being the kind of guy who was ball faking people to death. I mean, he took Hassan Whiteside and made him into a $98 million player. Oh geez, like there's an endless list of players. I mean, Gabe Vincent was in the G League, and this guy I think he scored 24 points.
Yeah.
Duncan Robinson was in I think the 3rd division of college, and now he's arguably, my goodness, I believe he's the best 3-point shooter in the league this season so far. He was the quickest to, I think 100, not 100 threes, but he was the quickest.
300. Yeah, quickest to 300.
300 threes. I mean, the guy has a 98, if I'm not mistaken. The guy has like a 98 in 2K right now or something like that from deep. This is a guy who, if you put certain players on the Heat roster, like take, for example, as much as I like Beal, one of the reasons why, if we were to end up getting Victor Oladipo instead of Beal, I would still be ecstatic in a way, because we've seen what Oladipo's been able to do before Miami. He could very well take a huge step after he gets here, playing in a system that caters to his abilities. Now, with that said, I think we need to be balanced and, understand not everyone is a fit for this kind of team. Michael Beasley was not a good fit for this team. I realized that immediately when he ends up in Minnesota and starts really developing and performing in a way where I was like, this was the number 2 pick in the 2008 NBA draft. Unfortunately, he got hurt, and there were a bunch of other things happening in Minnesota, but that's one example. So I think if he comes, great. I think it's just, we as Heat fans, we are very fortunate to have a system that is so stable the way it is right now, because, we know what we're getting every year. It's very easy to have an idea as to what is going to come out of these players. These players are going to work hard. All you got to do, give Spo some talent. He'll take you to the NBA Finals.
Yeah,
the bubble last year was the great equalizer, and the Heat got to the finals. If that's not a typical Heat thing, I don't know what is.
Yeah. At least Oladipo would be cheaper to acquire than Beal. That's for sure.
And, who knows? That could very well end up being the deal that is made. Because if we're able to get Oladipo without giving up Goran, Tyler Hero, or guys like that, I think you do that deal in a heartbeat. Because then you have all these guys off the bench. You have whoever ends up starting at point guard. You have Oladipo. You have Butler. You have Bam. And I'm guessing we keep KZ.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that Oladipo wouldn't solve is like the interior defense rebounding issue. But again, it would spread teams pretty thin if they were able to acquire him for sure. But, the dream for me at this point would be getting Beal and maybe trying to hang on to somebody like Duncan Robinson and then just sending them everything else.
All right.
Yeah, you see, that's the thing. Oh, okay. It's time. All right, good.
The game's about to start. You guys have the game right there, right? So you let me know, because I know the NBA likes to start games like 10 to 15 minutes after. It's 7:05 right now here, Eastern time. We do have a couple of questions here. Do you think Giannis regrets signing that contract? I don't think that many million.
Do you see how much money? Do you see how much money? I don't think he regrets that. Because here's the thing: in the NBA, contracts are guaranteed. You know, that's like what 200 something million. I would sign that deal. And I've been to Milwaukee, and it's like I still would have signed that deal in a heartbeat. Good for Giannis.
100%. Yeah, he doesn't regret that for one. And listen, Milwaukee's really good. They could they match up pretty well against a team like Brooklyn. Milwaukee might very well come out of the East this year.
They got to prove it.
Yeah, I mean, of course they do, but I think I don't think he regrets that at all.
No, you can't regret signing that type of contract, right? And they play indoors. It's fine. He's gonna play basketball anyway.
That's
so
true.
You think there will be a 3-team deal for Depot? They always get creative, right?
Yeah, that would have to do with the numbers at that point. I think because those trades expand to 3 players and 4 players. When you start dealing with all those contracts and all those numbers and things like that, that's how the Cavs got involved, and they threw a pick that they owned, and they landed a really nice young big man in Jared Allen in that deal. The Cavs came out of nowhere, and like all of a sudden they've got a future center on their hands for basically nothing. The Pacers swooped in and flipped Depot for Karis LeVert, and it all had to do with the contracts. So if they try to go for Oladipo or for Beal, depending, any of these big ticket guys, 3-team trades, 4-team trades happen because they have to figure out a way to make the numbers work. Trade machine is complicated.
It's funny when you look back at Heat history and you look at all the mega team trades that involve Pat Riley. If you see that the Miami Heat are involved in a 3 or 4 or 5-team deal, get excited, because I can't think of a multi-team trade in which the team's roster didn't end up getting a lot better as a result of it. I really can't think of a deal where that happens. And plus, if there are multiple teams involved, then that's a good chance that Miami is actually going to benefit by not having to give up too many of their key players. Because if you remember the Jimmy Butler trade, I think that was might have been a 3 or 4-team deal, right? The most this team gave up in the long run, they ended up giving up Hassan Whiteside and
Josh Richardson.
That was pretty much it. That was it. Now, getting Jimmy, in theory, for a player of Jimmy's caliber, you would have had to have gutted your entire team for that. That's not what happened. So if you see Woj show up on your phone, the Miami Heat are engaged in talks with like a 3, whatever, get excited, because that most likely means that Goran probably doesn't have to get traded. Precious probably doesn't have to get traded. Tyler doesn't have to get traded. So, hey, look forward to that. And it's possible. It's very possible, because remember, we have the best capologist in the league, and that's Andy Ellisberg. He will make the numbers work.
100%.
All right, talking about making the numbers work. Who wins tonight? Let's do it right now, because Ethan didn't give you a lot of time to actually go and expand on your answer. So who wins tonight? Who gets more points? And I don't know, anything else that you want to see in tonight's game?
Yeah, I have no respect for the Sixers anymore. So whenever Miami plays them, they're gonna look. They are a loser until proven a winner. So I have the Heat winning tonight, unless the Sixers miraculously end up with more points than the Heat do at the end of the fourth quarter. So that's just my take.
Listen, I'm with you. I love the Heat, but they're at such a talent deficit in this matchup that it's hard to see them pulling it out. I mean, I think they're going to keep it close. I think they're going to keep it interesting. But, the only way the Heat come away with this win, if they hit 20, 25 threes in this game, and they kind of, limit the 76ers on, hitting their threes. Danny Green can't hit 9 threes again, and the Heat win this ball game. So it's got to be, it's got to be a 3-point barrage. It's got to be something like that. What our buddy Sup,
our friend, yes.
Hero's got to go nuts. Gabe's got to go nuts. Duncan's got to go nuts. I mean, these guys got to hit everything.
It's almost tip off.
Yeah, it looks like they're about to get going here.
All right, so game's gonna start. Thank you guys for joining us, and thank you, David and Ricky, for staying with us as well. There is gonna be a post-game show here in the same YouTube channel, so go ahead and subscribe if you haven't done so. and turn on those notifications so you know every time we go live. We upload videos. We're trying to create a lot of content there. So Ricky, since you're here in South Florida, you should create your own show. We'll work about it. We'll talk about it because
Yeah,
people,
we'll figure something out. It's just
people
a matter
want to see you and listen to you more often here in talking about the Miami Heat or any other spots or politics. Why not politics? The new president is about to come up, and why not? I mean, we do stick to sports and we do stick to politics as well. So that's what we do here. All right. So thank you guys, and thank you to all of you that watched this pregame show. And I'm gonna go ahead and leave the score up right here for all of you that don't have the option to actually see what's going on. So I'm gonna leave that up right here. So thank you, Ricky. Thank you, David. We'll see you next time here in the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. So have a good night to all of you guys, and thank you for joining us in tonight's pregame show. Like I said, this is thanks to our friends from Biscayne Bay, and thanks to them, we're gonna leave the score open right here, and we'll leave you with this message from Biscayne Bay, and we'll be back sometime soon here in the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and leave the score right here for you guys. So this is gonna be it from now on. It's gonna be just the score here for all of you that are watching this and want to actually know what the score is. The game is just starting, so it's gonna be giving you updates right here real soon. So thank you very much for joining us, and remember to subscribe and give it a thumbs up to our YouTube. Thank you very much. So thank you to all of you that have stayed here with us in the Five Reasons YouTube channel. This is the first timeout during the game. It's 23-22 for the Miami Heat at this point. Right now, the guys on the court for the Miami Heat are Kelly Olynyk, Precious Achiuwa, Gabe Vincent, Tyler Hero, and Duncan Robinson, the five starters. Of course, we have 5 points by Duncan Robinson, 3 by Gabe Vincent, a couple by Hero, a couple by Olynyk, and a couple by Precious Achiuwa. 1 rebound for both Olynyk and Achiuwa right now, and Hero has a couple of them as well. 3 assists by Gabe Vincent at this point. So it's been a very interesting game. I mean, we discussed it during the pregame show. We knew it was going to be a hard task to beat this Philadelphia team, but right now it's looking good. It's looking like an even game, even though the Miami Heat doesn't have their best players at the moment. So thank you very much for joining us. We're going to leave this open right here, like we said, and you guys are welcome to keep sending your messages here, your comments, and we'll read them and we'll discuss it as we go. So thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for being here in the Five Reasons YouTube channel with us. Right, so it's the end of the first quarter. It's a 38-30 lead for the Philadelphia 76ers. Late run there by the Sixers made it a very open game right now. 8 points. It didn't look that way in the last. Before that. So it was what it was very close actually, and now the Sixers have gone to a very good end of the first quarter. So for now, the Miami Heat, the guys on the court, Robinson with 5 points, Hero with a couple. Give me a second here as we watch the replay. And they missed so many shots at the end of the first quarter it was too bad, right? So Vincent with 7 points, Tyler Hero with 6, Chris Silva with 1 point, but he did have a great defensive play on Embiid in that first half. Iguodala ended up playing in the first half, in the first quarter. There, Strus also played and had a couple of points right now. So let's watch the full box score, and let's review some of the key players right now for both teams. 8 points from Duncan Robinson. He is 2 for 3 from the 3-point line. We need more and more shots from him, and he actually was not the one with more shots from three. It was Gabe Vincent, who also made a couple of 3-pointers in the first quarter. We need more of that. We need more and more shots. In the first quarter, we had only 10 attempts. So that would round up into 40 shots during the game. We need more than that. Of course, last game we shot 60 times from three or around that number. So that's the amount of threes that we have to try as well this time. So Silva from the bench with 1, Strauss with 2. We already talked about it. Iguodala had a couple of assists coming from the bench. Other than that, just the 7 points by Vincent, a couple from Precious Achiuwa. He had both 1 defensive rebound and 1 offensive rebound. Kelly Olynyk also with 4 points and 4 rebounds and 1 steal. He was the only one that was not in negative points in this first quarter. He's at 0 at the time that he was out of the game. So hopefully for the Miami Heat, they can come back and fix some of these things that are bothering the team, because they saw they were winning up to by 5 or 6 or 7 points at some point during the first quarter. So thank you for joining us here in the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. We're going to leave the score right here as the second quarter has already started.